I'm Deloach.
Welcome to Positive Parenting, where connection comes before correction. These podcasts offer practical, compassionate tools to help you raise confident, emotionally healthy children through empathy, clarity, and consistency.
Amen.
Amen for that. And Miss Karen, another week, another empowering episode of our positive parenting.
Yes. So we got a topic that I is near and dear to my heart. It's called honesty. How much do we tell?
Honesty is the best policy, people. So tell the truth, but not because the truth, because it will set you free.
It does. And we're modeling before our children, and we want to, model integrity and honesty before our children. We want them to be honest to us and to others. And guess what? It starts with us, right? We've got to be the ones to be honest first. And how do we do that? How do we do that in ways that are age appropriate? Because they start out pretty little, they can't handle the truth. Can you handle the truth? No, they can't handle all the truth. They're not adults. You can't lay heavy adult answers on little children. So how do we do this? How do we balance this? How old they are with what they need to know based on these incredible questions. Have you ever had a 4-year-old ask you where babies come from?
Mm.
How much do you tell a 4-year-old, right? Or a 5-year-old? Wow, they have a baby. Where did the baby come from? Do we tell them a stork brought them? Do we, what do we, came down the chimney? I mean, what stories people tell is astounding, when they're not looking for that. Anyway, this is a topic I think is important because when I started having children, it wasn't very long before I was a single parent for 6 years with two little boys, and I had to make all these decisions and answer these questions, and even where's daddy? There's questions that are hard to answer. So how do we answer them? And this is something that Daniel and I are going to discuss today on positive parenting.
Indeed, people, as we said, honesty is the best policy, and it create integrity begins with a truth. Integrity begins with a commitment to truth, even when honesty feels uncomfortable. That's true. If you're being honest, it's uncomfortable, especially if you don't like to tell the truth. Being honest is upfront, creates a foundation of trust and strengthens relationships. People with integrity do not hide behind half truth or misleading words, especially your kids. If you're telling the truth, they will understand. And if you do that practice even when they're young until they grow up, that is a good legacy for them. People with integrity do not hide behind half truth or misleading words. They understand that honesty reflects characters that builds credibility. When truth guides our words, integrity becomes visible in our lives, especially our being a parent. They will follow you till the end. If they are create a new families, for sure, this is how my parents bring me these good traits, being honest.
Absolutely. And it starts with naming body parts and bodily functions because when they're really little, it's we use euphemisms for words like bathroom activities that are happening in the diaper, or it's something that my parents did. It's like, okay, this is these are the proper words for things, and it was shocking to me when I heard slang words, and it almost sounded gross to me because I knew the proper words. And even though it sounds crazy to do that, it just seems right. We don't call things by other names. This is your part of body, and this is your part of it. And we are uncomfortable with it, as Daniel was saying. Sometimes we're not comfortable with it, but that's the truth. That's what you want them to call it. And if a doctor were to ask them, how do you feel here? Well, they wouldn't know because they only knew some kind of slang word that was only part of your family. My mom came from Norway, and so we learned some Norwegian words for body parts instead of English, and
Mhm.
I was comfortable with those. And it was kind of surprising to find out that every American didn't know the Norwegian words, but they were the real words. But so it's something you can start with very simply. It's um, using correct words for the body parts and for the bodily functions is a good way to be honest with your little children.
Certainly, people uncomfortable when your kids asking where do we came from. My son asked me that at the age of 5, and I tell the truth. As you said, honesty is something that you will be build to your kids, and I explain to him, well, in the form of science. So that's what we do. Then I explain step by step, which is at the young age, he knows already. Oh, that's where I came from. So at the young age, I teach them when you getting older and adolescence, you start masturbating, you start to do something else to explore something in your body, which is we said it's uncomfortable, but we need to deal with it because it's a part of life. I don't want my kids that are hanging on their what's happening to their bodies. Then uh, I want them to learn from as a parent because it's our responsibilities. Because in the school, in the old system, they never taught us about that, which is supposed to be yes. As a parent, we are responsible to teach all those things because the more you build your traits to be honest with them.
That's absolutely correct. You can't trust somebody else. You know what they're saying at school. They used to not say anything, and now they're saying too much. They're even
True.
telling things that aren't in your value system. So you don't want to leave these things, number one, to others, but also to siblings or to other children. They don't know any more than your child does, and they're spreading things that aren't true. Now, another thing that happens, depending upon the age of the child, you can start getting very technical, very very scientific about the answers, and they'll get bored. They don't, they're not ready to hear all the answers, but you started the truth. You established a foundation of truth. All right, so here's one that was a big thing. Like, their grandmother, their grandfather died. Or where did grandpa go? If you don't have faith in God, then the only answer you have that's truthful is I don't know, or I'm not sure. Is there a heaven? Is there a hell? Is there a God? These are important questions you've got to get right for your own heart and your own life if you're going to be able to share those things with your children, right, Daniel? I mean, this is something that has
Mm.
drawn Daniel and I together as brothers and sisters in Christ. We have a firm foundation. We know where we came from. We know why we're here. We know where we're going. And these are answers that we can give our children that can help them from very young age. You should see my little 1-year-old grandson. We play these little Christian videos for him with songs, and his little animals are dancing, and they say, as soon as they raise their hands and praise Jesus, my little 1-year-old grandson raises his hands and praise Jesus, and he claps and worships, and his hands barely go over his head, his little arms and his very big head. But it is the cutest thing in the world, and it just, oh, warms my grandmother's heart, let me tell you. But you're building this legacy in your children of truth, and it's a firm foundation that they won't be shaken from when they get older. So there I was, a single mom with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and it's Christmas time. And every street corner in America, there's Santa Clauses, right? And I had
Mhm.
read them the poem, the night before Christmas, and all through the house, and they had seen Disney cartoons, so they knew what animation was, what characters were from their favorite little movies or their favorite stories. And so when the question came, Do I say that Santa Claus is bringing their Christmas presents or not? I really prayed about it. And the answer I came to is no. I want my children to believe in Jesus, who they can't see, than the Santa Claus that's in the mall. Santa Claus isn't coming down the chimney, not really, but he is a real character. They could accept that. Santa Claus is a good character. He's fun. He likes good children, and he does good things. So he's based on Saint Nicholas, and we learn the story about Saint Nicholas, who brought children, fruit and shoes and stuff. So it's something that you have to decide. I didn't want to then in a few years my children find out that Santa Claus wasn't the one that gave them their presents. That it was that kind of sense of betrayal. I know it wasn't something fun to me. And so I really decided I would tell them and teach them Santa Claus is a character, and he's a good character, but your presents are gifts from through your parents from God. And so it was something that was an answer for us. But I can tell you, when they told their little cousin there was no Santa Claus bringing them presents, it got us in big trouble because not everybody has the same values in my family. But it was something that was important to me to tell my children the truth. That I don't have to later tell them, "Oh, it was fun." It just it just didn't feel right in my spirit to lie to them about it.
Mhm. Yes, people, honesty requires courage. Being honest often requires courage, especially when the truth may be difficult to share. Integrity calls us to speak with boldness and humility. Avoiding the truth may seem easier, but it weakens trust over time. Courageous honesty strengthens relationships and builds respect. Through integrity, chooses encourage or courage over confront. And of course, speaking the truth with comparison. Integrity is not about telling the truth, but telling with kindness. Harsh honesty can damage relationship instead of strengthening them. Compassion helps communicate truth in constructive way. Honest words should encourage growth and understanding. Integrity balances truth with empathy. And of course, that is the importance of being upfront for everybody.
Yeah, and age appropriate. My children were very little. We could still celebrate the birth of our Lord, but we could still enjoy the cultural story of Santa Claus, and they didn't feel left out. They just knew the presents were coming. I mean, some people say, "Well, does he get any presents?" And Santa, yeah, I guess they still got presents. So we still were along with our culture. We didn't focus on Santa Claus so much as Jesus. And this is what Daniel's talking about in being full of integrity, that you want your children to also be truthful to you, that they're not going to be lying, that they can tell the truth and that it'll be okay. Who stuck their fingers in the cupcake? I did. Okay, well, and he made it look ugly. To help mama fix them before the guests get here, so it doesn't have the cupcakes don't all have your fingerprint licked on them. So learning that the consequences of lying are you're breaking down, you're breaking my heart. Telling the truth, this really hurt mommy, that you lied and said the dog did it, or whatever. Be honest about your mistakes. And, as being truthful, of course, we're being age appropriate. Younger children just need simple general facts. And then the older they get, guess who they're going to come to? If they already know you're going to tell them the truth. Then when you've got teenagers or preteens with serious questions, they know that they can trust you to tell you the truth. And if they do ask me questions, I say, I don't know, but I'm going to find out and I'll get the answer to you.
Very well said, Miss Karen. So, wisdom in how much to share also. Integrity is also involves knowing what to share and what to hold back. Not every truth must be spoken immediately or publicly. Wisdom guides timing in a tone in honest conversations. Sharing truth responsibly protects relationship. Integrity balances honesty with discretion. Definitely.
That's perfect. Now that's a perfect lead in for another story I want to tell. This
Mhm.
is not my story. It's from The Hiding Place, a book by Corrie ten Boom. She was a Dutch citizen during World War II when the Nazis invaded Holland. Her family was involved in rescuing Jewish families,
Mhm.
and that's why it's called The Hiding Place. But she wasn't a teenager anymore, but she'd been raised by a father, a very devout father who was a clockmaker. Okay, so this story, he would go to Brussels and take her with him on train to go and get his clock set so that it was perfect to the second every year. And so as they went on this trip, she asked him a very serious, deep question, and um, he turned to her and he said, "You know, when we go on our trips, who carries the suitcases?" "Well, you do, Papa, because they're heavy." "Okay, I want to tell you the answer to this question when you're a little older because right now it's too heavy a suitcase for you to carry." And so that really stuck with me, that story. It's like, okay, Papa, I trust you to carry that suitcase right now. Because just as Daniel's saying, there may be some things they're not ready to hear, or you know your child well enough to know the answer to that question is really deep. It's a deep question, and I want to answer it when you're ready to hear all the parts about it. And it's okay, but you're still being honest with them. You're just saving some of those details till they're older. They can carry that suitcase. Sometimes we're
Definitely.
stressing our children out. We're in these schools telling them things that they're not ready to hear, that they're not old enough to understand, and making them, deciding what gender they are at 3. I saw a video of that and I couldn't stop crying about it. It's like these are things that are not for little children. They're too heavy suitcases for these little children to carry. It's not right. It's abuse.
Well said, Miss Karen. And honesty builds lasting trust. Trust grows when honesty is consistent and reliable. People depend on those who communicate truthfully. Being upfront strengthens credibility and confidence. Integrity becomes a foundation for strong relationships. Honest communication builds lasting trust. And of course, transparency also in difficult moments. Integrity is tested during challenging situations. Being honest during mistakes demonstrate humility and growth. Transparency builds credibility and trust. Admitting faults encourages learning and improvement. Integrity shines brighten in difficult moments.
So true, Daniel. That's called modeling integrity. When you humble yourself to your children, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have responded that way. You're showing that honesty is something that it is important that you value, and you want them to forgive you and value it also. Being truthful doesn't mean laying heavy suitcases or things that they don't need to be responsible for yet in their age, which is why I think we're doing our children a terrible disservice when we tell them too much too soon, too young. And so you know your children the best, better than anybody else. And you know when it's the right time to say something. But just answer truthfully. There's no such thing as little white lies. The lie is a lie, and we don't want to lie. We want to develop these relationships Daniel's talking about, that when you establish this foundation that you can be trusted to tell the truth, who do you think they're going to turn to when they're teenagers? They know they can trust you, and they will be more likely to turn to you because they know you're going to tell them the truth.
Definitely. Well said, Miss Karen. Living with consistent integrity because it demonstrates through consistent honesty. Being upfront in a daily interactions build credibility. Small acts of honesty shapes character. Consistency strengthens trust and respect. Integrity becomes a lifestyle, not just a choice. And of course, the reward or the reward of honest living. Living with integrity that brings peace and confidence. Honest communication strengthens relationships and leadership. Being upfront encourages trust and respect. Integrity creates meaningful and lasting influence. A life guided by honesty reflects strong character and purpose.
And that's what we're wanting to do, right, parents? We want to raise children with that kind of confidence and integrity. And so we praise them when they've said, they admit they did something wrong. Yeah, all right. There's consequences to wrong behavior, but praise them when they tell the truth or when they apologize. Honor their choices to be honest. Honor their choices when they're truthful, because they will feel that, okay, it's worth it. And I don't like it. It's no fun to admit we've been wrong or done wrong, but it's worth it. It's better than the consequences of lying. So, yeah. So tell your children the truth at the stages that they can handle it. Right, Daniel? Having some kind of connectivity issues. So remember, trust that you know when your children are ready to hear it and when they're not. Be honest with them about everything, especially when there's big changes in your family situation and they have questions. Answer them as truthfully as you possibly can, and you know what they can handle when you tell them the truth. Keep it simple when the children are younger and get more detailed as they mature. And remember that they can trust that whatever information you're giving them is honest, truthful, and will stand up the test of time. One thing about telling the truth is you don't have to remember what you said because you said the truth. Lying is complicated and stressful. So telling the truth is always a much easier way to go. My children, they've grown up and now they're treating their children the same way. They don't have to pretend that Santa Claus is God. They can enjoy Santa Claus as a character and culture without having to think that he's more important than Jesus, who we celebrate at Christmas time. So address these big issues and the small ones. If it's a very impactful change, they need to know. I know when my grandfather died, we weren't allowed to go to the funeral. We weren't allowed to participate, and it really did create an inability in me to grieve when I needed to. And I think part of that was just not understanding that that was something that would have been important to me. So if you have children that are facing big life changes or big family circumstances, or maybe you're moving and they're having to leave their friends and they don't understand why this move is important. They need to know, okay, I got a new job, or I lost this job, or whatever the circumstance is. We inherited a house. We're going to move there. You're going to make new friends. Be as honest with them as you possibly can about what to expect, and don't trivialize that they're sad about it. It's okay, and honor that they have emotions, and don't try to stifle their emotions as they're experiencing these life-changing events. Go ahead and listen to them. Let them express it. Cry if they need to. Be sad. Promise to help them write letters or to make phone calls if it's about staying connected with people that they don't want to leave behind. Or again, if it's a death in the family, you don't have to um, pretend you anything other than what you know. And if you're a believer, you have the answers and the faith to say they're still alive, they're with Jesus now, they're not in pain anymore, and they're not old anymore. They're young and healthy. And you know what, when it's your turn to go to heaven, you get to see them again. They're going to be there waiting for you, and they're praying for you even now. So these are things, when you know these things, wow, do they give you a comfort. And Daniel and I are, as we've shared often, we're coming from this place of faith and belief. And because of that, that it colors everything that we say and do, and even the integrity that we walk in with our children, and the honesty that we want for ourselves with them and for them with us and with others. Telling a lie is a big deal, and it is one of the 10 sins in the Bible, as in the 10 commandments, is to not lie. That's how important it is to God to be honest. And so, as we model integrity before our children, then we are helping them to model integrity, starting with us and then with others. And so we don't let even those little white lies, we don't let them get away with that. We really insist upon the truth. We honor when they have told the truth, and then we expect them to be um, have consequences over their lives. But we also do say, well done for telling the truth. And if you've been around a 4 or 5 year old, they like to walk in truth. They're very bold with the truth. Um, I remember being with my little daughter shopping, and we were um, standing in line behind a person who was a dwarf, and she had never seen a dwarf before, and she just struck up a little bold conversation with the person and said, "Wow, I'm almost as tall as you are." And the person wasn't offended, just said, "No, yeah, you're right. This Are you gonna get any taller? No, this is as tall I'm ever gonna be." Well, later, we had a big conversation about, talking to people that are different than us, or standing in the bank lines and behind somebody saying, "Mommy, why are they so fat?" When the person can hear them say it. It's like it's not that we wanna deny that, we just wanna say, "Okay, we try not to say out loud everything we're thinking when we're thinking it, but talk about it later." Welcome back, Daniel.
Thank you, Miss Karen, for continuing. Sorry, I lost my connection. And wow, thank you so much for being part on parenting or positive parenting. This will be available on the podcast itself next month. So tune
Yeah.
in for that next month, people. But for the meantime, we're live on every Saturday with Miss Karen. So please tune in for that. So, Miss Karen, would you like to plug in something?
Oh, yes, please, listeners. Daniel is a premier podcast host. He has 22 podcasts so far, but I get to do 4 of them with him besides positive parenting. We do Bible verses 101, coaching 101, and love letters where people write about their relationships. So please listen to all of our podcasts and all of Daniel's too.
Yes, people, please support us. If you don't like our live episodes, our podcast itself, we're live on online radio live 365 as well on Radio Talks in the US under the Universal Podcast Network. So, Miss Karen, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you. And listeners, we love you. God bless you.
Monica people, see you soon.